But the one thing that gave me hope was when a hospital priest entered my room with the Bible.
And the last rites?
Yep.
Oh my
But he
God.
gave me hope, not because I remember what scripture he was citing or anything
Yeah.
like that, but I remember when he smiled at me, just a friendly smile. I remember thinking to myself, this is some sort of sign. I don't know what it is, but this is somebody that is on my side.
Hi, I'm Lane, and welcome to Lane's Domain, where we deconstruct the game of life one player at a time. Addiction. When you think of addiction, what immediately comes to mind? Drugs, alcohol, sugar, shopping, maxing out the credit cards? Well, today we're going to explore the world of addictions that aren't at the forefront of our minds. The hidden ones, the ones rewarded by society, friends, family. The smiled upon, encouraged addictions that enshroud the addict in masks, covering up their issues, who they really are, and presenting a false sense of self to others and to themselves. These positively regarded addictions can be just as destructive to lives and as difficult to kick as the negative ones. And today we're going to speak with an extremely talented and accomplished man who has experienced both sides. He rose from a 9-year-old tennis lover all the way up to an ATP world-ranked professional tennis player with addiction as the driving force. He followed that up by becoming addicted to long-distance running and then used that driving force of addiction to skyrocket to success in the business world, just fresh out of college. Mike has kicked all his addictions, and now, at the ripe old age of 50, he's started a brand new life of total freedom. How did he do it? We're going to find out. Let's meet the great Mike Sprouse. Welcome, Mike. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for coming today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Lane.
Oh, I think we're blessed to have you. You have so much to teach us all. So, Mike, let me start with this. Your first addiction was tennis. You picked up your first tennis racket at the age of 9. You achieved enormous success. You were a champion throughout your teen years. Why tennis, and how did it become an addiction for you?
So the first time that I remember getting really hooked on the sport was watching it on TV when I was 8 or 9 years old. And in that era, it was really the Bjorn Borg, John McEnroe, Jimmy Connors. It was sort of the heyday, the golden age of tennis. It's been called before. And then in the years that sort of followed that, it was the wave of like Yvonne Lendl and Boris Becker. And then on the women's side, you had the great rivalry between Martina and Chrissy Evert. And I think all of those dynamics and just watching them on TV and the fashion and just the emotion of the sport. And I like the independent nature of having to solve problems by yourself on the court with no help from anybody. I think all those things just really appealed to me as a young boy.
So you found yourself with a talent for it. It wasn't difficult for you to get good quickly.
I just found an old wooden racket in the garage and I took out an old can of tennis balls that with dead tennis balls basically. And I just sort of fiddled around in the driveway at first and I started to sort of try to mimic what I saw on TV with the forehands and backhands. And I was sort of teaching myself in a way, just right in my driveway. And what ended up happening was we had some old garage doors that had windows on the doors. And I started to break a couple windows here and there. And it was starting to become an expensive little side hobby. But it really, in my heart, I knew it was going to be tennis because it's all I could think about, really.
Well,
The first book I ever read was called The Inner Game of Tennis, which as like a 10-year-old, that's not really normal, I don't think. So
this was meant to be.
Yeah.
So, what effect did becoming a number one singles and number one doubles player in your state during prep school, high school, have on your life, your self esteem, your attitude about life, your ego?
Yeah, great questions. I think it was really instrumental. There's nothing that I would change about that. I think what it took to do that is probably pretty on topic to what we're talking about today, because it was a lot of learning about hard work and dedication. And so I think for me, just having that success at a pretty young age within the state and then eventually within the region and nationally and all of that, it just sort of built momentum as the years passed. But I was along the way, I was not a for sure thing by any means. I mean, and I had a lot of naysayers. I mean, I can still remember the individuals who said, you will never be a good tennis player. And there's motivation in that. And so I learned a lot about how to sort of turn some of those negativities into positives.
Wow. So, by the time you were in college, you said that your tennis was all consuming, that, from the second you woke up until the second you went to sleep, you were thinking about it or doing it. What was that like?
It was an obsession, and to be honest, it felt normal to me. I didn't know another way. And it felt to me like, to be great at anything, I had to put 100% into it. And I had to be living, eating, sleeping, drinking tennis, or whatever it is, whatever your pursuit is. But mine was tennis. And I think it felt very comfortable to me. Some people from the outside probably said, well, you're crazy for doing that and sacrificing all that you had to do and trying to study and play tennis and travel and do all the things we had to do. But for me, it just felt, this is who I am. This felt good.
I'm still me, with a heart they couldn't steal, with a truth that time helped me reveal. They tried to draw a smaller frame, but I stepped out and signed my name. I didn't fade, I didn't fall, I rose in spite of it all. They tried to shake me.
So you used the naysayers for motivation for yourself, but why in your mind would people say things like that to you rather than saying, go for it, Mike, go, man. You got something happening there.
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I'm so glad you asked that, because, I can think very clearly of the people who encouraged me. I can remember them right away. And just two right off the bat were my two coaches in tennis, one in juniors in high school and one in college. And I think for the rest of folks who maybe weren't so high on me or wanted to try to sort of talk me down, I think it was fear. And I think it was people maybe looking at my journey and comparing it to their own and sort of seeing, well, Mike maybe is achieving this, and I could have achieved that if I had done X, Y, Z. And so maybe there's a hint of not wanting me to sort of progress the way that I want to progress.
God, yeah, very, very destructive. I mean, you really would have to build a mindset that perhaps uses that to say, I'll show you.
Yeah,
I'll show you.
That's what ends up happening, I think, for a lot of people, including myself.
Right. Now, what did you know at any point during, let's say, before you went to college, that you were addicted to it?
So to answer your question, not at the time. I was not aware of that. Looking back, knowing what I know now and having gone through everything I've gone through, that is definitely the case for me. And I think when you look at some of the patterns of different things throughout my life, going from tennis up until present day, I think knowing what I know about addiction, it definitely fits the definition.
Mike, do you think that is required to create a champion such as yourself and the other champions?
I do. I don't think that the great tennis players who were better than I was, and history making athletes would ever sit here and say, well, like, I'm an addict. Like, you just wouldn't do it, and I don't blame them. But I think that there are certain qualities that you absolutely have to have. And the obvious one, I think, is repetition, because you can't be good at anything without shooting free throws a million times, or hitting a tennis ball a million times, or whatever it is for you to become a master at. You have to do it over and over, and you have to have a certain discipline and stomach, frankly, to be able to sit there and do it over and over again, right? So I do think it takes a very specific kind of mindset to be able to do that. And I think my only wish, looking back on tennis and in terms of not making it so addictive, is I just wish somebody would have said, Mike, it's okay to take a month off.
Would you have listened, though? That's the question.
Well, I think if it was explained to me this way, and this is what I'm hoping to try to do for other people younger than me who are coming behind me, it is just to have that little just break and understanding that these are qualities that, you know, you have to be great at something, but just know that it's good to sprinkle in some time that you have other things to do.
Right. And so you're saying you didn't do that?
No, I couldn't tell you even 5 days that I took off in 14 years.
14?
Yeah, 14 years. I couldn't tell you. I don't believe that I took a week off from practice or anything.
Wow.
And I think, like, I don't think I'm different than most anybody. I think if you have that level of obsession. But on the flip side, with tennis, I have been really excited to see, especially in the last 3 or 4 years. This is 2025 right now, and so I think in the last 3 or 4 years, people are a lot more outspoken, especially in the world of tennis, about mental health, taking breaks, the challenges that are very specific to that sport, that as an individual, you're obsessed, and you can't share anything with teammates, and it's very pressure packed. And so I've been really heartened to hear some of the really, really elite professionals talking about it.
Fantastic. So we've moved into a new era with that. And so you can really appreciate that since you've been on the other side of it. So you took your great skills, and so many universities wanted you, top universities like Princeton, and you chose Notre Dame and did your schooling there, graduated, majored in business accounting. What made you decide to quit the professional circuit at the age of 23?
There was one match that very specifically was a clear sign to me. First of all, sort of going back to when I was 9, my dream was just to be a pro. I had some really, really, like, long off dreams of, like, I wonder what it would be like to hold the Wimbledon trophy, right? But I think as I got into it, as I got sort of into college and certainly on the tour after, I sort of said, I've really done a lot with, my body type, how I'm built. I felt pretty good about where I was. But this one match in particular, I was playing a guy from Japan, and he was 17. I was 22, 23 at the time. So I was like the old man of the match. He had been on mini tours for 2 or 3 years at that point. So he started playing and competing professionally at a lot younger age than I did. He had no education, and it was all he was going to do in his life. I mean, it was charted out for him. And he was a great guy. I mean, we didn't have any problem with the language barrier or anything, because he had already traveled the world for 3 years playing professional tennis. But I could sense his desperation at every point we played. I could sense it. And I could also sense that I didn't have that. There was this just absolutely he has to make it sort of vibe.
Mhm.
And for me, it was like, this is a dream for me to be here. I feel so good about being here. And so it was just a completely different mindset that I felt like, okay, this was it.
Wow. Wow. So when you left tennis, why did you take up long distance running and marathons?
There's going to be a common theme here. So I think for me, I had that dream that I lived, and when it stopped, I had all this time on my hands, and I needed something new to sort of think about. It started out as this like aspirational, I'll do one and then figure it out. And then once I did one, I was like, I love this. And like, this is my new tennis. And that's really what it was. It was like sort of replacing one addiction from another. And so, what do you do in running to be able to run a marathon? You run over and over and practice runs, and you have a training regimen, and you have all these things that were so familiar to me from what I had just done from the prior 14 years. And so it was so natural to me. And then I think that's when some people close to me sort of said, you're getting a little crazy. And they couldn't understand why I had this desire, but I did. It was just me.
And it was similar to tennis in that it wasn't like a team sport kind of thing. It's a solo thing where you're kind of out there, with your own strategies and how to make it. And, yeah, you can talk to the other people running the race, but it's really just you against you.
I think it's a really good point because for me, I think one of the assumptions that people had with me was just this ultra competitive person. And I would say that that's true in that I was competitive just with myself.
Fantastic. So you, unlike a lot of other tennis players, graduated with a degree in business from college. So let's talk about your business life. How did your addictive personality, or let's say obsessive work ethic, help you attain some pretty extraordinary achievements in the business world? I mean, as I was reading through the 5-year stints at each place, I was like jaw dropped. The fact that you would be able to create divisions within established companies or corporations. You introduce tech to companies that didn't know about it and convince them to invest in this new weird thing called the internet. And then also I want to talk about your 5-year stint at in the entertainment
Yep.
field of Playboy, with Hef expressing his gratitude to you for your contributions, having had set up business meetings in the Playboy Mansion, attending the infamous Playboy Mansion parties, and so on and so forth. So it's all
Yep.
yours. Take it away, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if nothing else, it's interesting, right?
Yes.
No, I'm deeply humbled by all of it. And I think that, I think were it not for my obsessiveness and what I now deem to be my addictions, I don't know that any of that would have happened. So I'm pretty grateful for that. And I think along the way, especially when I got into the business world and sort of out of the sports world, I think that's where the masks of addiction were smiling, and everyone was smiling to what I was achieving, and I was doing well for myself, but making a lot of other people money too, because that's what you do when you're at a corporation and doing well. And so I think, the harder that I worked, applause. The more I traveled, great job, we'll book you on this flight. So all the things, all the sort of obsessive qualities about doing well in sports translated perfectly to the business world, because none of it I had any problem with. I didn't have any problem commuting from Los Angeles to Chicago in the morning and working an entire day and flying back to LA, later that night. I could do it. And so you really get no time to enjoy life and to enjoy life without an agenda.
Did you surprise yourself with some of the things that you have achieved in that way in the business world?
Looking back, I can almost say that I'm shocked because it doesn't feel, based on everything else I've gone through, it doesn't even feel like the same person. Like I feel like I am a completely different person than I was 15 years ago.
Well, let's say right now you just said you're a different person. You don't even remember being that person. Maybe because you've taken off that mask, this is the person that was underneath that all the time. Is that possible?
Yeah, it is. I think that's a really good observation. Nobody's put it that way before, but I think that's 100% spot on. Is that maybe I'm not a changed person. My core values are definitely the same. Those are not changed. But I do think that the extent to which I was wearing the mask has maybe chipped off quite a bit. Um, I'm so much more comfortable with going outside of my process and being more open to different ways of doing things, different ways of seeing things, and even having this discussion, today. Um, Probably I would have had some sort of an outline or an agenda a month ago and been like, okay, this is the plan and this is what I want to have. I would have had the whole thing. And so it's just not the case. I mean, I went to the gym, I went for a long walk before it rained. Like it's just completely different. And without losing the essence of what I know about myself.
The mask of protection molded to my face like skin to bone, kept me safe while my true home waited for me. I checked my mask at the door, felt the air on my face for the first time, and knew the future was mine to create for me.
Right. And the wisdom that you have attained, which you can share with everybody that you come in contact with through your book, with your children. So, so you had this huge run for years, the tennis, the running, the corporate success. Something happened, some shell broke or something started crumbling. What happened?
It was really personal relationships around me. And I think without throwing a group of people or any individual under the bus, I think it was the first time that I really felt like I was on the receiving end of unkindness and maybe shreds of dishonesty, or at least sort of using me as a mechanism or a tool or something to sort of like grab onto, as I was going up, sort of having people feeling like people were trying to drag me back down and make me into something that I wasn't. And I never really had to deal with other people in that way. And especially people who I felt should have been my biggest cheerleaders. And I think that's what disappointed me the most and started sort of the unraveling of things for me. And it wasn't any individual person, it was a collective. And really the responsibility was mine to actually be mindful and to understand that some of these issues are things that I wasn't aware of before. I'll give you one hard example. I knew nothing about narcissism until well after I had gotten through my struggles and having worked with psychologists. When I was a kid, I just thought people who were narcissistic were vain.
Mhm.
That was it.
Mhm.
I had no idea that there was a whole generational aspect to it, and there was this whole um, layers and layers of it. And I finally had several professionals, not just one, sort of say, Mike, you've been dealing with narcissistic tendencies around you for decades.
Mm.
And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But everything I was doing isolated me from all of it. And because I was doing well, I probably, if I had kept on that trajectory, I probably never would have found out. I never would have had reason to learn anything about the things that I was having trouble dealing with personally around me.
The narcissist, then, let's say the narcissistic collective around you, how did you fend off their abuse?
I didn't. When you're when you're unknowingly around it and exposed to it, like I was and again, I was told this was going back decades. So it wasn't just a spur of the moment thing. It was like something generationally that
Right.
I want to end, basically with me. But I think actually it was this, I think, basic sense of compassion that I believe I bring to everybody. And I think there's an ability for narcissists to sort of take advantage of people who are sympathetic or have empathy. I was told too, and I've seen this myself, that empathetic souls are just ripe for certain personality types.
Yep, absolutely.
And I certainly felt that. And as I was going through my recovery in addiction, we obviously unpacked. I did a lot of self-work and unpacking with professionals about my entire history, my family history, just all the dynamics that I never had to think about because I was so focused on what I was doing and what I was succeeding in and what society was telling me I was doing a great job at.
Right. So what you were doing when you were so focused on the achievements and the successes is that, you were able to move through all of those narcissistic behaviors of the people around you. I mean, it's how you protected yourself, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's exactly that. It was almost like I was insulated from so much because I was self-insulating in a productive way.
Yes.
I was doing things that nobody would ever say, well, he's aloof or he's a loner. I was out there, but I was just on my track. And as soon as I wavered a little bit off my track, that I was open to all kinds of things that I just never really expected, and I didn't have the skills or capabilities to cope with, frankly.
Wow.
And I think that added to my downfall. That was really sort of that was when the mask of addiction that people don't like really struck.
Stepped in, but I think that something as powerful as the bad addiction had to come in and unmask you. You had to go through this dark night of the soul, I'm thinking, in order to find yourself, in order to let go of those masks. So do you think you had two accidents within a short period of time? The truck that smashed into the back of your car at the railroad crossing, the shotgun, the bullet coming through the window of the subway in Chicago. You said your brain felt like it was exploding.
I was in a lot of just physical pain, not just some of the emotional turmoil that I was going through, but there was a lot of just physical sort of stabbing pain happening that was, again, something new to me. And I think just the two accidents that you reference in 1 year, looking back now, I sort of understand it. They were so very random, But looking back now, I sort of say to myself, there was a spirit telling me, like, you're not safe there where you are right now. You need to get out. And I didn't listen.
Right.
I was like, no, this is the, great tennis player you're talking to here. And like, I'm going to do it my way and stick this out and figure it out.
Yeah.
And that was not happening.
Oh my God, that part in the book where the 10 seconds goes down and you're like, should I get out of the car? No, it's a guy moving back there. Is the train really coming? It was like, I was like on the edge of my seat for that.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever heard the song by AC/DC. It's called Thunderstruck.
Oh yeah.
And it's the very beginning. I was caught in the middle of a railroad track, and every time I hear that, I love that song. And every time I hear it, I'm like, that was, yeah, that's exactly what it feels like.
He wrote it for you. But yeah, so I mean, that cracked a shell, literally and figuratively. So had you been drinking up to this point when you started on your pain meds?
Yeah, so great question. So I think when I had always been a social drinker when I entered the professional workforce. And then even when I went into business, I was still running marathons for several years, still not really on my radar. And then I think as the years went by, I started to drink a little bit more socially. And I think then when all of the stuff started to happen around me that I wasn't coping well with, and I wasn't working out, and I wasn't on any of my regimens or doing anything remotely disciplined in my eyes, that's when it crept in and it got more and more. And then it reached the point where there was no control. I in my brain could tell myself, do not do this, and I couldn't not do it. And I think I think a lot of people have similar sort of stories about that. But and that was confounding to me too, because in my eyes, in terms of how I viewed myself, I was always this guy that had complete control over my mind. Every point in tennis, I had to be under, control. I won sportsmanship awards because I didn't lose my cool on a tennis court, right? So I was sort of, in my eyes, sort of like master of my emotions. And then I wasn't. And I couldn't stop it. And so, the pain medications for my concussions definitely were a part of it. But pretty soon they gave way, pretty much predominantly to alcohol.
So now you go into, I don't know if that's the next step, but you do go into the hospital to deal with your concussions. But then do you go into rehab quickly after that because they tell you you can't drink anymore or you're going to kill yourself?
I had been told by doctors who had seen me for concussions that, they didn't know the extent of my drinking because I didn't tell them, but they said, hey, if you're going out, if you're partying, if you're doing this, like, don't do it anymore because it's impacting your brain and it's not able to heal. And of course I couldn't listen to it because I just wasn't able to stop at that point. And so I had flown home for Christmas to Connecticut, home where I had some family. And then the whole thing just almost ended for me Christmas Day, 2017. And so I did end up in the hospital, but it was the emergency room style visit.
Wow.
So yeah, that was when, that was the bottom, was that Christmas Day. I remember being very, very sad because Christmas to me was different and I wasn't with my kids at the time. And I was very, very broken up about it. And Christmas morning, it was just, it wasn't a pass out. It was just convulsions. That
oh my goodness.
Stop.
Oh my God.
But the vivid memory for me was the shackles on the bed because I couldn't control my body. And then the 251/140 blood pressure reading. which was on the monitor next to my bed.
Uh-huh.
But the one thing that gave me hope was when a hospital priest entered my room with the Bible.
And the last rites?
Yep.
Oh my
But he
God.
gave me hope, not because I remember what scripture he was citing or anything like that. But I remember when he smiled at me, just a friendly smile. I remember thinking to myself, this is some sort of sign. I don't know what it is, but this is somebody that is on my side. And then I was out, not dead, obviously, but I don't remember anything for a week after that.
Wow. So you brought yourself back, you went to rehab. You said you recently experienced setting boundaries. How are you setting boundaries now for yourself with people who might try to, who have narcissistic tendencies, or do you even draw those people to you anymore?
I actually don't feel like I do. Um, and I think that my boundaries, I now do not try to change anyone's opinion about me.
Mm.
And I used to try to do that all the time. Like, why don't you like me? And
Right.
like, what's wrong with me? Like, how can I change your mind to feel and all that stuff is just gone now.
Wow. So you were, those of us who do that, which many of us do, it's like you're doing a dance, a song and a dance, and there'll always be people who don't like you. And so, God, I'm really happy that you're yourself now, because now you probably don't give a darn, you know.
Well put. Yeah, you could use another word.
Yes, I almost did.
But no, I think that's exactly right. I just think like that has been the biggest difference is that um, I'm so at peace with how my life has gone, and that's a lot of the reason why I felt the urge to write a midlife memoir. I mean,
Mhm.
nobody really does that, but I felt the urge because it was truly like the end of an era. It was the death of sort of an ego-based existence, or one that sort of always chased the cheese around, the mouse chasing the cheese all and round and round and round. And it was the end of that.
Mm. So do you think that it has to do now, the place you're in now has to do with self-love, that you
Yeah,
love yourself as you are?
it is that. I mean, if I were to summarize, which is so impossible to do actually, but if I were to try to summarize, everything starts from within,
Mm.
and that goes for self-love, compassion for yourself and for others. It's all of the things that um, are very high on the human consciousness scale. So things that are low are things like fear and shame and anger. Like those are very low consciousness states, and they're very stress-inducing states.
Mm.
When you start to get into courage and love, one of my favorite books, not to plug somebody else's work, but I was so impressed with it, is a book called Power versus Force. It was written by Dr. David Hawkins, and he goes through all of these discussions and research projects that he conducted about people and their behaviors,
Mhm.
and what is sort of life adding versus life subtracting. And so what I'm really trying to do is just to make sure that I'm always checking within myself to make sure that I'm doing all the life adding things,
Mm. Mm.
and how I treat people and how I treat myself, most of all.
You said you have some bad days every now and then. What happens on those bad days, and how do you pull yourself out of it?
Yeah, the bad days now for me are so much better than my bad days before.
Mhm.
But my bad days now, I am sometimes, I can sometimes get a little frustrated when things aren't happening as fast as I want them to.
Mhm.
I've reached this sort of different state of mind in recent years, and I know I'm on a path, and I still have desires, and I still have things that I want to do and accomplish,
Mhm.
but I'm not beholden to them.
Mm.
I'm not a slave to them anymore. But there's that on those bad days, old there's that old me that sort of comes in and goes, yeah, but you gotta, you gotta push, you gotta do it. Come on, get on the, clock's ticking. And so like those days, I am aware of them now. I know it right away. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm feeling it. It's one of those days again. And so those are the bad days for me are just very sort of well handled spiritually.
Mm.
My bad days are never waking up going, well, I wish I could have a drink today. That doesn't happen anymore.
Thank God. Thank God.
Um,
Now that you've left obsessiveness behind, how do you go about achieving your aspirations and goals?
this is it's something that I learned about letting go. And I think it's having the mindset and the mentality and the trust and faith that if I set my mind in a specific direction, all the things that I want to achieve and I want to happen will happen.
Mm.
And so it's bringing sort of forces together that are going to align with who I am and send me in the right path.
Mm.
And having trust that I don't need to do as much as I thought I did before in terms of just being the busy bee anymore.
Oh, that's
And
fantastic.
so I think a lot of the messaging, I do a lot of studying on ancient philosophy and some of the different spiritual teachers out there. I know all of them. I follow a handful of them very closely.
Speaking of which, who are those spiritual teachers? Do you mind sharing that with who you
No,
follow?
no, no, not at all. I mean, so going back probably to when I was a kid, the first outside of the Inner Game of Tennis that I already told you about,
Yeah.
that was the first book I ever read. But outside of that, Thoreau was the first real author that I remember
Mm.
resonating with.
Mhm.
But then in recent years, it's been people like Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Mhm.
His story was fascinating. Rest in peace to Dr. Dyer. But I mean, he helped so many people. And I, in particular, relate really well to him because he had his own struggles with the masks of addiction that society didn't like very much. Like he had his own issues on that and he worked through them and he talked about them pretty openly. And he helped a lot of people in that way. But his messages around letting go and sort of the spiritual approach definitely are in my wheelhouse and they're ingrained with me. I could listen to a podcast by Alan Watts. I could listen to that man 24/7 probably. The only other one that I'll sort of say, which is along those lines, is my favorite book is The Alchemist.
Ooh.
And that is pretty ripe with spiritual messaging. So.
Fantastic. So, speaking of books, you've written 9 books, but the most recent one was to celebrate your 50th birthday, and it's a memoir to the first 50 years of your life, which are absolutely fascinating. I have read it and I love it. The Rising. It's just amazing. I mean, I have yellow highlighter throughout the whole thing, and I had so many bookmarks in there, but I threw them all out before, so it wouldn't look terrible when I held it up. But so, why should someone read your book?
I think for me, it was a death and a rebirth.
Mm.
And I think if there is anybody out there, male or female, who sort of feels like there's this shift that's happening. And in fact, Dr. Wayne Dyer, who I just mentioned, wrote a book called The Shift, and he did a movie called The Shift. And it is this sort of discussion about changes in life when your priorities do a 180. So to use myself as an example, 20s, in my teens, 20s, 30s, what were my priorities? Achievement, money, success, things,
Mm.
right? And then it's somewhere along the way, whether it's through challenges like I've gone through, or whether it's just through the natural change in the course of life,
Mhm.
your priorities become vastly different.
Mm.
And so my priorities now are family and faith,
Mm.
service. And so my list today versus what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, they're completely different. And so my life takes on a completely different meaning from this point forward.
Mhm.
And so my midlife memoir was really a way for me to communicate that and to sort of show all the stuff that I was closing the book on and saying goodbye to.
Mm, mm.
And it's not necessarily like I'm leaving people behind because the important people in my life are still very much a part of my life. But I am leaving a lot of people behind. And I'm also leaving a lot of things behind that I now just have as experience. It was either Alan Watts or Dr. Dyer that said, it's the wake in my boat.
Mhm.
The wake doesn't drive the boat, it's behind you. And so
Fantastic.
the rising for me is my wake.
Oh, how beautiful. How beautiful. Two other things. First one is you have kicked an addiction that most of us are addicted to. Many of us want to kick it, and we obviously don't want to kick it enough because we can't or we don't. Social media. How did you quit all your social media? Please, words of wisdom here.
I love technology. I love the fact that we're doing this right now on Zoom. Um, I like FaceTime. I like all of the tools of technology that we now take for granted. I'm very thankful to the inventors of all those different applications. The social media platforms, um, it got to the point for me where I was just so bothered by humanity. And I felt like I was better than what I was putting out there. And everybody that I was reading or watching, I thought they were better. And I thought collectively, we should be better than what we see on social media. Selfishly, I think too that, with 3 kids who are young and they're before they would even be on social media at this point, I don't want them anywhere near it because it's a tough place. No matter what you do, good, if you do something really good, there's still going to be people that want to throw things at you and say bad things and be mean and bully and try to tear you down. And to me, those things all represented what I was getting away from, like leaving behind.
Mm.
And I think that was the ultimate driving force for me in getting rid of, my persona and my identity on those platforms.
Right.
I too, some of it's a little bit personal. I don't know if anybody else would share this, but I would much prefer to just talk directly to somebody, kind of like what we're doing now, as opposed to just going out there and trying to say something that sounds good or is made up or is prefabricated or is a lie. Like, so, and all of that stuff we see on social media every day, in my opinion. And I just don't want it in my life. I don't want those negative forces in my life. Now, to be completely fair, you do hear the stories out there from the people who have found a long lost loved one or have used a social media platform to report an emergency. There are good cases like that. But I would argue that there are tens of thousands of cases every single day that don't get talked about, which are really harmful to people. And especially if you're young and you don't have the wherewithal or the tools internally to sort of handle some of that.
Right, right. Well, that's brilliant. And I'm going to absolutely think about what you said and I'm cutting down already now. I told you I'm not going to go into the thing, but not wearing my glasses, my reading glasses, makes it very uncomfortable to look at social media because I can't see it very well. And it's hard work. So it's just like, who needs it? So maybe that's one of the ways you take off your reading glasses. All right. So what I would like to ask you for is, do you have any words of wisdom for young people and especially people of all ages as you've looked back over what you've learned?
Yeah, so I try to remind myself of this most days. And For me, sometimes I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but so I need easy things to remember and think about. But some time ago, I think it was sometime last year, I sort of said, like, what are a couple things that I just always need to remember not to do?
Mhm.
And what would make my life so much better if I just didn't do these things. And I came up with BRC: blame, resentment, and complaining.
Mhm.
And so I told them, and we all do it. It's not like I'm some angel over here. But if I can be mindful of not doing those things, I always believed that my life and my happiness would be incrementally better. And so with blame, I'm not a victim. I had a real problem that almost killed me. I'm still not a victim. God didn't do it to me. Nobody else did it to me. It wasn't the narcissists that in my life for the last 45 years. It was none of them.
Mm.
It was it was it was stuff that I controlled and that I needed to gain a better understanding about.
Mm. Mhm.
Resentment is my favorite one because like we all get unhappy with people and we resent and we hold on to things longer than we should. So I think just the focus for me is just understanding that if I hold any resentment for anybody, I'm the one who's weaker. It does nothing to the person I'm trying to change. And so I know people in my life who I love who have had resentments for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And to me, I'm kind of like, why would you give your power away to that other person who clearly doesn't care? And so if you can just get rid of the resentments, it's a huge bonus. And then complaining, I really try not to complain. I don't think I've ever been somebody that overly complains, even though there's always the tendency. But I think with complaining, for me, if there's something that I'm dissatisfied about, if it's something I can control, then go do something about it. If it's something I can't control, let it go. And so I really just try to keep those three simple things as rules to follow just on a daily basis. And I would give that advice to my kids when they get older too, is just like, don't let these three things into your life and you'll be better just from those.
Brilliant, brilliant. And the last is, are you doing any personal coaching or like what are you doing now?
I'm doing a lot of volunteer work. I am writing another book because it seems like I'm always writing another book at this point, whether it's in my head or on paper, but I'm actually putting pen to paper on another book. So I'll be doing that. I do mentoring and coaching. And like I said, I'm doing a lot of volunteer work just locally. And, I'm really trying to make more of a dent in service and telling my story. And for those who want to listen, just sharing some wisdom and what I think might be helpful for people. And
Mhm.
wherever it goes, it goes. So that's another thing that's different now too, is, I can't say I want to be here by 70 or I want to be here by the time I'm 80. I just look forward to, taking it wherever it goes for as long as it goes. So, and keeping myself healthy.
Wow. Well, this has been incredibly inspiring and a thrill and an honor. I can't thank you enough for agreeing to come on here today. I've really, really enjoyed this. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you, Lane. I appreciate, when you do this and the service that you provide to so many people and just the opportunity to really dig into such a natural and free flowing, type of interview. It's just a great service that you do. So thank you.
Thank you.